Morning, everyone. Welcome to another Rookie Card Collector 123 video. In today's episode, I'm going to continue my highlighting of my journey to 310, explaining how I built my Baseball Hall of Fame rookie card collection between the years of 2004 and 2014. Where the collection was at the beginning when I started, and what the final version of the collection looked like. Again, I'm going to continue to highlight some of the upper echelon Hall of Famers, um, covering some of the cards I had over the course of the 10 years, every time I made an upgrade, what I picked up, what I sold off in order to fund the purchase that I needed to make then. As I was doing all this on a pretty tight budget. There was funds available to spend, but most of the money I was using came from sales of the original collection that I started off with. So the first highlight we're going to talk about, the first major Hall of Famer today, is going to be Josh Gibson. Gibson, especially in recent last couple of years since Major League Baseball added the Negro League stats to the MLB record books, all the Negro League players, especially the stars and Hall of Famers, most of all, have seen prices skyrocket on their cards and other career contemporary collectibles. So the first Josh Gibson item that I picked up, and this was well into the collection, it was probably about 2008 or 2009 before I actually was able to pick up a career contemporary Gibson item. This one ended up being something I picked up at a national convention. I believe it was in Cleveland. I picked up a 1940 Winter League. I think it was a Cuban Winter League photo. It pictured him in his with his catcher's mitt, and there was one teammate along with him. I believe it was not Cuban, Puerto Rican. I believe it was a Santurce uniform. I'm not 100% sure. But it was a two-player black and white image. It was a little larger than a snapshot photo size. And I picked that up like I said, at a show from a well-known Negro League collector slash dealer. And that was the very beginning of the PSA starting to grade and authenticate photos, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. So as I was building the collection, as I mentioned in previous videos, every single item in the collection I wanted to have graded, either by PSA, SGC, or Beckett. At that time, Beckett was a third major grading company. So the only one that was doing photographs or just started doing photographs at that point was PSA. So I sent the photograph into PSA, and fortunately, the size of it also fit in there. I believe it was the postcard size holder or the tall boy holder that they use. So I was not only able to get it authenticated as a Type 1 photo, but I was also able to get it encapsulated and returned back in the PSA holder with the Type 1 designation on the label. So I was thrilled to pick up that Gibson item. And I had that for probably about a year and a half or so. And I went to another national a couple of years later. This is probably around 2010 now. And again, looking for a Gibson. Now I was looking more specifically for the Gibson rookie card. And I went to a table for a dealer who probably knew more or knows more about Negro League memorabilia than anybody else on the planet. And he had a Gibson rookie available for sale, and we worked out a deal for it. And at that time, the price on it was $20,000. That's what he was asking for it. So unlike like most people that were probably at the show at that time, I was not walking around with $20,000 in my pocket. So I asked if we can, work out some sort of payment plan. And I also happened to have with me a Judd Wilson Type 1 photo. Judd Wilson is another major Negro League Hall of Fame star. And this one pictured him very early in his career in the early 1920s with the Baltimore Black Sox. So I had that photo with me. The dealer that I bought the Gibson card from, he liked that photo and was interested in obtaining it. So we worked out a deal where I gave him the photo plus the net difference in the money, cash for me to pick up the Gibson. So I agreed to that. It was raw. It was not graded at the time, and it had just a squiggly pen mark or pencil mark. I think it was pen though on the back. So just because of the writing there on the back, it was going to max out at a 1.5, I believe, when I would get it graded, which is what I did. So I got it graded by SGC. They graded it a 1.5 as I expected. But the really amazing thing was at the National, this dealer I had known for several years through Net 54. We both attended Net 54 dinners, and I had bought a number of things from him. He had done some deals with me. So there was a trust factor involved. But I was able to, at that show in 2010 at the National there, I gave him a check for $1,000 plus that Judd Wilson photo. So basically, that was roughly about a quarter of what the price was for the Josh Gibson card. And he let me walk out of the show with the Josh Gibson card in hand with the promise that I would pay him back $1,000 a month for the next 15 months until the full amount was paid off. And of course, the next 15 months went by, and every single month, the first of the month, my check went out in the mail to him, and he got paid in full. Because back in those days, it wasn't so much, drawing up a legal contract as it was in the hobby. If you give somebody your word means everything. So if you break your word, that spreads fast, and before you know it, you're blackballed and have a very difficult time doing business in the future. So anyway, so I was thrilled picking up my Gibson rookie card, and I would have that for about a year and a half or so again. Now at this point, it's 2011, 2012, and I've really started to focus heavy into Negro League material, especially the Hall of Fame items that included more than one multiple Negro Leaguers on the same item, like team photos, team postcards, things like that. So around 2011, I was able to find a 1937 Homestead Grays. It was roughly 8 by 10. It was a team photograph, and it was a Type 1 original. And of course, in 37, Gibson was a member of the team for a couple of years at that point. And that was the very beginning of their 9-year dynasty of winning Negro National League pennants from 1936, I believe, until 1944. And of course, Gibson and Buck Leonard were the two key linchpins on that team. So my photo had Gibson on there, and again, my goal from the beginning was always get something earlier than the item I had previously. So the Toleteros Gibson rookie card was 1950 to 51. The 37 Grays photo was roughly 13 years earlier. So I decided I would try to pick up the photo in auction. I was able to win the auction. And then subsequently, I sold the Toleteros Gibson in another auction. And unfortunately, it was about a year and a half after I bought it. And the values of those, because a few of them had come out onto the market recently at that time, the value had dropped somewhat. So I ended up recouping only roughly 13,500 out of the 20 that I spent when I bought that Gibson that Gibson Toleteros card. So I actually lost about $6,500 in that transaction, but I did have the 37 Homestead Grays photo, which I was able to pick up at a very good price, especially later on. Eventually, when I sold it, I did really well with that. So I had the 37 now, and the earliest Gibson was right around 1930. And that was a real photo postcard that was put out by Harrison Studios. they did several members of the Homestead Grays on individual real photo postcards between 30 and 31, including Gibson. And that postcard had come up for auction a couple of years earlier, but it was also autographed by Gibson twice, once on the front and once on the back. So between the autograph and the rookie year postcard image, the price was crazy for that time period. I believe it sold at auction for right around $88,000, which was way out of my price range and my budget. So I was not able to get that one. So I had my Grays photo. So now again, a couple of years later, in another auction, I came across a Pittsburgh Crawfords 1934. It was sort of a panorama style photo, so the players were all in like a single file line on the ball field. And the 34 Pittsburgh Crawfords were possibly the greatest single Negro League team in history. They had Satchel Paige, they had Gibson, they had Cool Papa Bell, they had Oscar Charleston, they had Judy Johnson, and then they had a number of other stars that were not in the Hall of Fame, but big stars of the day. So fortunately I was able to win that photo in an auction. So I then sold my 37 Grays to help pay for that 34 Pittsburgh Crawfords photo. And that would be my final Josh Gibson representation in the collection. So I was able to get back to 1934 for the Josh Gibson rookie item, or the earliest item that I was able to afford. So a lot of interesting stuff with Gibson. Of course, today I'm kicking myself for number one selling the Toleteros card, which today in a 1.5 is a six-figure card, well over $100,000, I'm sure. Especially with a beautiful front that was probably in the 5 to 6 range, if you just graded based on the front, and did not consider the pen mark on the back, which was a blank back anyway. So that's my first story for today. The second player happens to also be another Negro leaguer. This is Frank Grant. So Frank Grant was a second baseman. This is way before the official Negro League started. So Frank Grant was a rookie in 1887, so it goes back all the way to the 19th century. He played for the Buffalo International League team. That was an integrated team. I believe he was the only black player, or there might have been maybe one other black player on the team. All the other players were white. And Grant was the second baseman, and first season of professional baseball, 1887. So there was a team photo that I knew existed from all the way back then. But there's, as far as I know, there was only two copies that existed. One of them was in the Baseball Hall of Fame library, and then there was a second one. So my initial pickup for Frank Grant rookie card ended up being like it was for several others from the Negro League side of things. It was a 1974 Lachlan Old Time Black Stars commemorative card. It was produced maybe 70 years after he retired, so not a fantastic option, but the earliest Frank Grant card, quote unquote card that's out there. So I picked that up, and of course they were not very much money, especially back in 2008 or 2007 when I got it. So anyway, I end up starting to become involved with Hakes auctions, as I've mentioned in the past, around 2011, 2012, and start handling some of their material. And right around that time, before I was actually doing the descriptions and handling the sports section and all for Hakes, an auction came up, and they had a 1905, it was a Cuban X Giants. The Cuban X Giants were a famous Cuban and African American mixed team back in the 1890s primarily. And Frank Grant played on that team in the 1890s. I'm not aware of any of his memorabilia or photographs that exist from that team. But in 1905, there was a reunion game that was held in upstate New York, and the Cuban X Giants were out of New York State. So that was sort of their home area when they were playing back in the 1890s. So they rounded up a bunch of the ball players that were on those 1890s teams that were still around and still active in professional baseball. And they got them together for a reunion game. And they played this game against a team called the Asylum, which was a hospital in upstate New York. And they played the game at the hospital's ball field where they normally played their semi pro baseball. And one of the really interesting stories to this is the pitcher for the Asylum team against the Cuban X Giants in that exhibition game was Jack Chesbro. And Jack Chesbro spent a number of years in Major League Baseball with the originally New York Highlanders and became very well known for being the last 40 game winner in Major League Baseball when he won 41 games. I believe it was 1904. So Chesbro was on the Asylum team. Frank Grant was on the Cuban X Giants team, and they played this benefit game for charity, I believe it was, in upstate New York. So Hakes had this postcard up for auction, like I said, just before I started doing the sports for them. And it appeared in the auction, and they did not have Frank Grant identified on there on the description. The only big name they had mentioned was Grant Home Run Johnson, who was a major Negro League star in the 1890s and then the first decade of the 1900s. He was a shortstop, but he was a power hitter, which was really unique for that age, for that time frame. And so they mentioned him there in the photo and outlined his position where he was located in the picture and all. So long story short, the postcard ends up selling in the auction. I was not involved in the bidding because Grant Johnson was not in the Hall of Fame. Frank Grant was not mentioned, so I was not aware that he was involved either. So it sells in the auction and ends up that I guess the buyer of it, we got word from one of the Negro League experts in the hobby that the photo did not include Grant and Home Run Johnson. So after looking into it a little more, Hakes ended up agreeing and saying, okay, it was not in there. So long story short, they ended up re-auctioning it, which put it up for sale again. And this time I started to do a little more research on the team, and I saw that Frank Grant was on the roster for that time period and that particular game. And I actually made a trip to it was somewhere near Schenectady, New York, upstate New York. I made a trip to the public library there, and I tried to research like through the old newspapers. I had the date and all that the game took place because it was actually printed on the bottom of that postcard. So I went to the library, looked through microfiche for the newspaper sporting section of the papers for that day, until finally I came across the game and I actually found the box score with Grant in the lineup and playing in the game, as well as all the other. There was some other Negro League stars of the day that were involved on that postcard as well, but Grant was the biggest name, and that's what I was interested in because he was a Hall of Famer. So anyway, I was fortunate enough to win the postcard in the auction. So I had my Frank Grant item representation, and it was a career contemporary, which replaced the 1974 Lachlan Black Stars, which was way past the time he passed away. So I was really thrilled to pick that one up. That was a cornerstone in my collection for a few years, maybe 5 years or so. And toward the end of the collection, it was probably 2013 or so, maybe a year before I sold everything, a year or two. I came across something, a eBay listing, and somebody had a Cleveland Gazette newspaper from 1889, 1890, somewhere around there. And it had a baseball section, and it happened to have a woodcut of Frank Grant in that newspaper. And the Cleveland Gazette was an African American newspaper. So the general public did not, did not purchase those. It was kind of strictly for the African American community. So you could imagine very few of those survived up until today. But anyway, I was able to get my hands on that paper and ended up with that. And I was able to remove the woodcut of Frank Grant from the paper. I submitted it to Beckett because, again, at the time I was looking to have everything graded. And Beckett put it in an authentic holder for me. They dated it, the date of the newspaper, Cleveland Gazette, woodcut, Frank Grant. And that was from, like I said, about 1889. So that 1889 Grant image, of course, predated the 1905 by quite a few years. So again, I ended up selling that 1905 Cuban X Giants postcard through Hakes at an auction, and the newspaper cost me almost nothing because nobody realized that Frank Grant was a major Negro League Hall of Famer, and there might be some value there. So I got that basically almost for free, and I did really well selling the Frank Grant postcard with the Cuban X Giants later on. So that woodcut would end up being my final Frank Grant representation in my rookie collection. And other than getting the 1887 Buffalo team photo, which was one of two known, I'm sure there was nothing ever produced earlier than my 1889 woodcut that I had. So another interesting story in today's episode, both Negro Leaguers. I was gonna talk about a third player, but I see we're a little over 20 minutes already. So I'm going to cut off the video for today at this point and begin next time with another upper echelon Hall of Famer and my story of the rookie item that I started out with and what I ended up with, and how we came to compile such a diverse collection. So in today's episode, we've got a panorama photo, which was the final Josh Gibson piece, and we've got a 1889 newspaper woodcut for Frank Grant. So again, examples of two more unique type of items that were my final representations in my Hall of Fame rookie collection. So if you added everything up at the very end, I would imagine probably less than 50% of my rookie collection at that point was traditional baseball cards, given all the other array of items that I had. But anyway, hope you found today's video stories somewhat interesting. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys again on the next one.